Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about the riff? Sometimes talking about our favorite albums containing our favorite riffs. Sometimes we get to talk to people who make really great riffs. I'm your host, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, is my other co-host in music, the Baldini, the great bald hope, Dylan Adams. Dylan, how are you doing, buddy?
Absolutely wonderful. It's a nice, dreary, drab day here in the Tennessee, Kentucky area, but otherwise doing really well.
We got some great guests today. Two members of bands like Cryptic Shift and Slimelord, a couple guys who are making some waves in extreme music. Definitely know their way around a good riff. Their latest record, Chytridiomycosis Relinquished, is out now. It is full of muck and grime and tons of riffs. I'm here, of course, with Xander and John of Slimelord and Cryptic Shift. Guys, how are you?
What's up, man? Nice to be here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for inviting us on.
The first question I kind of like to ask everybody is, you guys have clearly been playing riffs a long time. You know your way around a good riff. You know what a bad riff sounds like. What to you makes a good riff? What do you look for in a riff as a listener or as a musician? I'd like, open it to both of you guys.
God, John, what makes a bass riff?
Well, bass specifically. I think like melody is super important. So something that's like catchy is always cool. Something memorable. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can do that and all sorts of dynamics, Something brutal is cool. It just really depends on the context. But
Yeah, it's definitely all about context. I mean, some of my favorite riffs are like kind of really simple ones, like from bands like Gojira or like Immolation, that have like some. It's like a simple riff, but they have a way of playing it or a way of presenting it, like within music that's a little like off center and makes a really simple thing like really interesting. But like equally, yeah, like context, you can have a totally insane riff like Necrophagist or something that's all over the place, but a lot of those like Necrophagist riffs have like a lot of melody like within them, even though they're spidering all over the place. You can like sing them. So.
Do you remember, you kind of mentioned a few names. Do you remember maybe some of the first riffs that you kind of learned how to play when you were kind of coming about your instrument?
I remember learning, the first riff I learned was by a band called Ride, this track called Drive Blind, and it's got this, it's more like a little like melody lick on top, but that's like a really simple like descending thing on like the high E string, and that was like really easy to learn for a first riff, and that's like a really catchy thing that I always loved. So.
yeah, and then similarly for me, a big one was like Nirvana, Lounge Act, just like a real driving riff that just glues the tune together, I suppose.
Were those maybe like some of the first records you picked up too? Like, I don't know what the music scene is like in Leeds, but like what were some of those first records that you guys were kind of fascinated with, whether heavy or non? What was like maybe those first kind of initial records where the light went off and you were like, okay, this makes sense to me for sure?
I'd been playing a lot of Guitar Hero back in the day, like
Yeah, me
2000 and like when did Guitar Hero 3 come out? 2007, 8 or something.
Oh, then yeah.
Like Rage Against the Machine was a big one for me from that. And I remember like my parents got me some like 4-disc box set where they all come in those like cardboard slip cases, and it had like all 4, well, the 3 records and then that cover album. So that was like one of the first records I picked up, and like one of the first bands I like super delved into and just got to know the entire catalogue. And Rage Against the Machine are like masters of the riff, of course.
John, what were some of those first records you were kind of picking into? Was it also Nirvana and all that stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few bands where they're kind of like, your first love. So you get into a record and, for me, even like early on, that was like Blink and stuff, But I'd say like sort of a pivotal moment was when I first heard Holy Wars.
Oh,
just because of how fast it is and how intense it is. And I heard that, I was like, right, I want to do that. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Cool.
we're all pretty into Megadeth, but I got into Megadeth from the 2009 album Endgame,
Wow.
which
Okay.
is definitely the best one of the like post 90s era. That's up there with Rust in Peace for me. A lot of riffs, great production, loads of solos, probably more than Rust in Peace.
They got oh man, there's like Head Crusher, right? And then like
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
when that record
Sure.
came out, I was like, I gotta learn. I think it's The Right to Go Insane. I was like, that's like it's kind of like a fun
Yeah.
warm up riff, but it's a good time.
Yeah, good bass riff on the start of that. I actually played The Right to Go Insane in one of my like high school assembly end of the year like performance things. I think I just played it like on my own with a crappy little amp in front of 300 kids, which is pretty weird to think about going back.
Dang. Well, did you ever get a chance to see Megadeth at any iteration? I know there's been kind of a revolving door of members over the past few years, but that's like still the one band out of the big four I haven't seen yet.
Seen them definitely a few times. I remember first time I saw them was Download Fest, 2012. I like travelled down for my birthday. I was about 15, and it was amazing. I think, as far as I'm aware, it was like one of the last times that they played in standard as well. Which how much of a sort of tonality their music has, it's quite noticeable when they drop to D. But yeah, man, that was awesome.
Yeah, I saw them on the 13 tour, the Super Collider tour, and I think I saw them at Download 2012. Did they play that?
Yeah,
Is that the one you mentioned?
yeah.
Yeah, and that was great because I'd like recently got into him over the last couple of years, and it was proper sick seeing like Chris Broderick shredding. He's so good.
We're kind of talking about like beginnings and some of these like early listening habits. You guys seem to have known each other for quite some time, probably around this era, right? Like within maybe high school years as well. Like Cryptic Shift started maybe in like 2012, 2011, perhaps.
It started in like 2013,
Okay.
like properly, and I met John. I met Ryan in 2013, and then we started playing together that year. And then like the following year, 2014, John's band Exiled was like another thrash band from the area, and then in 2015 he joined Cryptic. So we're closing in on like nearly 10 years of playing, which is sick. Yeah, John was in Exiled.
Yeah, my old band. It was Death Rush, big into Demolition Hammer and like Anthrax, so there had to be gang chants and a lot of shreds and stuff. It was cool. Bit more like amateur, I suppose, but it was decent, man.
No, it's still a good listen. I think it's still on Bandcamp, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still somewhere on Bandcamp.
What's it called? Is it called The Prophet?
So the EP is called The Tribe, and it's based off Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh wow!
The guy who wrote it, Joe, who did play in Cryptic for a few years, also he joined like after me for a few years. But yeah, he's obsessed with video nasties and all these sorts of films, which I quite enjoy them myself. I'm not on the same level, but yeah, that was funny recording that.
I don't think there's maybe another movie that I know of that has like made me like physically ill, like watching that movie.
Yeah.
And for it to be like decades old at this point, it's like, I think I watched it in high school. I was like, what the fuck am I like? What, like, I shouldn't be watching this, but I can't look away.
I don't think I've ever seen it. Did Joe like bring it over once and start playing it?
It might have done.
I don't remember. I'm surprised he didn't, but I've still not seen it. I don't really intend to.
Yeah, it's a interesting one to put on a gathering or a party for sure.
Yeah. There's certain movies that you'll never forget seeing, and that's definitely one that's up there. I think the worst, I stumbled upon a Serbian film on YouTube. Somebody ported it to YouTube, and there's things I'll never forget, and that's that. Some monster had it up. It was up for like a week, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah, a colleague recommended me watch that, and I was like, oh, right, interesting. Watched it, just sat on my own in the dark. It was one of the most fucked up experience I've ever had.
Oh,
Well, when Exiled reforms, you can do the next EP about a certain film.
Yeah, something else. Yeah, maybe that.
So I'm curious to know, like, what were the initial goals behind, Cryptic Shift? And listening to your most recent record, there's such a, I feel like the same could be said for the Slimelord record as well, is that there's such a meticulous kind of construction of songs and like world building. Was that the goal from the get-go? Like, I don't know, the way you guys are able to kind of, I love a movie visually, like it's great, but when I listen to the record, it definitely does have like a cinematic feel. And I wonder, like, did this happen over time, or was this the goal initially? Like, what was kind of the initial goal for Cryptic Shift?
That's definitely some of the developed, because like unlike and like a lot of bands, Cryptic didn't start off with like an ultimate goal in mind, and wasn't able to like present itself initially with like perfection in releases and with like a goal. It's journeyed like our like musical abilities and understanding of music and discovering music. So like the really early stuff is just us figuring out how to play extreme music. So it was definitely a couple of years till it got to that level. Like Beyond the Celestial Realms was like a hint into that, and then that's when like it started to click around like 2015, and then like Visitations came to mind, and it was like, right, that's the ultimate goal that we're going to aim for. But like the Slimelord was in a position where we were all like experienced enough musicians so we could like present Slimelord for the first time to the world as like a cohesive thing, rather than having to do a lot of the groundwork with Cryptic. But like John joined in 2015, so what's your experience
Of Cryptic,
like where it was at the time?
I'd say at the time, like the ambition was there, so there was always longer songs, but it wasn't quite a fully realized idea. Our influences were definitely sort of a bit more on our sleeves, but then we sort of shaped our own sound a bit more, and ended up having more of an idea of what we wanted to do with it.
Yeah, if you follow like every Cryptic Shift release, like with the early demos and splits and singles and stuff, there's a real like progression, like learning curve. And that's why like the debut album was like in 2020, like so many years into the development, because you can only do one debut album, and it was like, right, now it's time. Visitations can be the like first stepping point for anyone,
What the thing I noticed about both projects too is that a lot of these songs seem to have started like well before, like years in fact before the album actually came out. I think I read somewhere in an interview that some of the songs that ended up on Visitations was like maybe started around like 2014, 2015, and Slimelord, you had those songs from 2019, or at least most of them. Does it, like, for me, I'm so like such an antsy person. Like if I feel like if it's like, oh, I just want somebody to hear this and like get it away from me, is it hard for you to, maybe kind of sit with something and really like, it seems like you've really polished everything and made sure that every note is where it's supposed to be. Like, how do you know a song is just done?
Yeah, a lot of these ideas are years and years old, because like for me, I trying to envision the album and the track listing and like what's going on in the story behind the songs like years and years in advance. So like creating the structure initially, and then having an idea what the songs will be. And sometimes I'll have a couple of riffs, but then sometimes it'll be years later, and I'm like, right, this riff I've just come up with, that'll fit in this little slot of this song, like where I want the story. But like the track Voyage Through Dimensions from Beyond Celestial Realms, a handful of those riffs that were written for that were then used for Moonbelt Immolator from Visitations, because that was like the first time I was really experimenting with thrash riffs that were a bit more alien and a bit more like directly sci-fi sounding, and like a couple of them riffs even still are going to be on the next release. So like 2014-15 was definitely a time when I was discovering a lot of new, like for me, music, and like strange sounding stuff like Cynic or Atheist or Gorguts Obscura or just like even more wacky obscure stuff. So like a lot of the riffs that even come up now still have that like juvenile, excited feel about them because I came up with them in the moment that I was like really enraptured by these like crazy artists, and like my writing was amateurish, but there's something special about that, like not knowing every answer, you know.
At what point do you bring it to the other guys? Like, because it seems like, you know, while there's an idea in mind, like John, you're fucking gliding all over these tracks, man. You're a fancy motherfucker. Like you guys are holding it down in the rhythm section. But I feel like, you know, just from hearing it as an outsider, it feels like, yes, there is an idea and a structure in mind, but you also kind of maybe get to really kind of run through the tracks. What's the writing process? You know, perhaps if Xander brings in an idea, like how do you approach a song like that?
I'll mention that like a lot of riffs you'll have heard years and years before. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember when we were recording Beyond the Celestial Realms, I was like jamming to you like the Actic Chasm riff and
Literally, and even the tunes that were on that you said were like, 4 years old, or whatever, for Beyond the Celestial Realms. But yeah, what I would say is like Xander always has so many ideas and he kind of archives it all, and it's great. And what he gives us to be able to do our own parts on and jam over is like fantastic. But yeah, I feel like you need to be happy with where it's at in terms of the arrangement, but we'll still bring it in, try ideas, and as the way we sort of work, there's always a lot of like revisions. So there might be a riff, and then we play it for a while, and then it's like, all right, we're not going to use this riff, but we've got something else. So we're sort of like on your toes, but like in a good way. It's good to be challenged, and that's like always the way the tunes have been. So it's pretty awesome.
yeah, like there's a lot of times I'll bring a riff or a section and we'll jam it and I'll record it. And then like years later, it's like, oh, do you remember when we played this? And I like show them all the recording, and everyone's kind of like, kind of, but not really. But
Well, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I fully remember that.
yeah.
Another time,
But I do keep a lot of recordings of us as like jamming and
mm-hmm.
try and keep in mind and like where this could be in a few years' time and test out certain riffs and that.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of coming up with my own parts as well, it's not always the same. So sometimes you might have something and I'm like, right, I can already definitely tell what I'm going to do here. And then other times inspiration might just come. Like I remember with visitations, there was a few times where I'd come around to yours and, we'd hang out, we'd chill, might have a few beers. I remember waking up one morning like a little hungover in yours and then coming up with like a certain riff. I was like, I've got it, I've got this part now, like record it and, compiling it all together myself kind of thing.
Yeah. You want about the riff in Moonbelt?
Yeah.
The Tritone one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the. I must be like about 16 minutes in. There's like 3 solos back to back, and it's the rhythm for Joe's solo.
Mm-hmm.
That's like based on like a tritone, but that's like a completely different riff and rhythm to like what the guitars are doing.
Yeah, totally.
But it creates like this underlying like melody, even though the guitar riff is just like chugging on a tritone. Yours has got like a bounce and a rhythm to it, and like it has that slide that kind of turns around and gets you back to the first beat of the next riff.
Definitely, and I'd say for me, I'm playing. That's something what I really enjoy because a lot of the time in metal you can just hear the bass. Well, you can't sometimes, and also a lot of the time it's just kind of following the guitars, and it works sometimes, but it's cool to mix it up and throw other things in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely being able to kind of hone in and take songs and basically go, all right, at a certain point in time, we've got them structured loosely, right? You can go through it. And sometimes you'll walk into the practice space the next day. Hey, that song's done, but you know what? Let's flip it around backwards. Let's turn it upside down. Let's look at it in let's move this part to the verse. Let's move this verse part to the bridge. Let's play this 6 times, 16, whatever it may be. And you basically can play through it and create all these different elements to it and create these different almost textures and this kind of different world out of, taking one song and completely restructuring, and you almost come up with different parts based off of that. And as a bass player in heavy music in general, it's always you're told the rules you have to follow, right? It's the guitars are up front, bass holds the fundamental with the drums. And especially in like extreme metal where it's, everything's tuned lower, the drums are faster, guitars are thicker, there's more bass response to them. It's finding that niche for the bass to kind of cut through or stick out in. And what I've noticed is with both of these projects is you have an ability to still hold that fundamental, but you also have the confidence to go, you know what, guitars, drums, they're already holding it through. Why can't I do this thing? Why can't I take the melody spot? Why can't I take the lead line? Why can't I create a bass riff under a guitar riff that are two separate parts, although they have the same tonal center that we're all kind of focusing on, right?
100%, man. And I think that's kind of the way I work, because ultimately you have to serve the song, but like, how can I make the song better by doing that, with a melody, maybe something interesting harmonically, something different rhythmically. And I'd say for Cryptic, it's obviously kind of a bit more extreme in that I'm going ham. But with Slime, it was almost a different approach. It was like, right, where should I not play? Where should I rate? Where can I then do something that is even more like highlighted,
I think with like establishing rules, I don't think that's ever something that we've been like super conscious of. We've always just been, we're in this band together and we've got these songs and we're just going to play them and we're going to make them sound cool to listen to. We're going to make them fun to play. Like being like super restrictive of the bass is like that's dumb. We've got John on bass. He can kind of do anything.
Right.
So we might as well make everything like really interesting.
The thing that I've noticed too with both of the projects, while there might be some similarities to an extent in how you guys operate and work, but I feel like it's very hard, especially when you have like most of one band and another band. I think of like Blood Incantation and like Spectral Voice or something like that, where it's like these most of the band are in each project, but they sound completely different. I feel like I can listen to each band, Cryptic Shift and Slimelord, and they sound like two completely different beasts. When kind of looking to start Slimelord, was it just like an itch? Like, was that just a sound that you were always like, I'd love to be able to do this, but it doesn't quite work for Cryptic Shift. So like, let's just, I don't know, see where this goes. Like, how did that initially form?
There was no predetermined like material prior to Slimelord. I don't think it would have ever been a thing unless it could be absolutely like unique compared to Cryptic Shift. It can't be related in any way. That's like why it came about, definitely. But Slimelord basically started because Cryptic was recording and like mixing. It took like a really long time to get visitations down. So during that time, we were like, let's jam some death metal, and that's just how it came about. And we just created the Slimelord sound because of wanting to create something so different to Cryptic and so like way more rooted in death metal rather than thrash metal.
It happened like super organically as well. So how Cryptic, maybe we can be meticulous on even how the tabs are and how we're writing it and stuff. Slime was very organic. It was a jam band in some sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's all like most of the songs come from just rehearsal tapes of us just jamming, which is the exact opposite of Cryptic, which why it's really fresh to play that, like personally for us, because it's not like, oh no, this song sounds too much like Cryptic. That's just not a problem that we run into with all the differences that Slimelord has.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's interesting to hear, you guys are just kind of in the room and just jamming and seeing where it goes. And maybe that, lends itself to, we have the time and we can kind of do that. Or like you guys have known each other for so long, you just know like maybe that unspoken thing of like looking at another guy at the other end of the room and being able to play something. The thing I found most unique about the record too, and I know Dylan kind of mentioned this in the review, is that while you mentioned it's kind of more rooted in that death metal sound, there's like a lot of different influences on this record. the kind of like instrumental at the end, it almost feels like kind of like a, you know, like a kind of big rock song almost. Or I hear like, you know, the name is escaping me, but there's like a part that almost kind of begins like something you'd hear off the Crow soundtrack, like a post kind of rock song. You know, what kind of other influences are you channeling? Like, what do you guys maybe listen to outside of heavy music that maybe found its way onto this record in particular?
Yeah, like the Heroic Demise, like that track. If you really want to classify it, I guess you could call it some sort of post rock thing. But honestly, like personally, when we're jamming Slimelord, it's just death metal, but with weirdness and strangeness, and like for me, that's it. And all the like weird stuff we come up with is just what we come up with. I don't think there's any like, I don't really listen to post rock. I don't think. Do I listen to post rock? I don't, what exactly is post rock?
You don't really. Obviously, like shoegaze and that like comes through in all the pedals and stuff. But it's interesting with Heroic Demise, to be fair, because that almost feels like a nod to early Slimelord. Because of course we've got our progressive and sort of technical leanings, but that wasn't as prevalent in like the earlier material. It sort of just happened naturally as we took our time a bit more in doing the tunes, and was the natural progression, you know.
Yeah, the Heroic Demise riff, and then
because it's 3 notes.
Yeah, that song's 3 notes like the whole way through, and the riff at the end of Hissing More as well. There's a riff that's just laid back grooving, and then there's one on Come Off Resurrection's Chamber, and it's like that's like a really Slimelord riff to us. I think when it's like what is it, like 140 BPM or something, and it's does double kickers, just that grooving and just tremoing on the riff, and that's like the most Slimelord a riff can be when you're just grooving on that. So it's nice. Yeah, it's nice that we have like a bunch of those riffs on the album that's still very like Delta Death Sirens sort of stuff.
Well, yeah, I thought it was interesting as well, Dylan, on the review that you posted, because you really liked that track, and I think that track's interesting because the way it sort of flows, it's a bit like it's not really even like a song in the way it's structured. It's
right.
It's like an empty song, you know.
It's just one riff like back and forth, and then kind of an outro. And what was like what your bass stuff like on that song, like compared to like the super fast stuff? What's Heroic Demise like?
Heroic Demise is like just a jam, really. Like there's lots of in between, like fills, you know, and little parts that I came up with, but ultimately it's just about holding it down and grooving, you know.
It's definitely nice to hear that it was all like just kind of free in the writing structure of what Slimelord is. Just to know it's like, all right, it's death metal, but there's no parameters, right? We're going to go and we're going to record what's in our head and just let it play through, and kind of hearing that it's more based off of like jamming on kind of a different genre or whatever, however you want to refer to it. And knowing that like, okay, you know, I've got a pedal board, I'm going to use it, you know, let's play around with this. You know, you mentioned Gorguts Obscura earlier, or like bands like Atheist, Cynic, Voivod, whichever, all the bands that didn't really have these rules that they had to follow, and they really stick out. I'm not the biggest Tool fan by any means, but I could hear kind of the exploration of sounds on the record as a whole. And on Heroic Demise, that's where I really heard that was like, all right, there's a little bit more exploration going on with the type of like song it is. But hearing it overall on the record and hearing the different points where I could be wrong, you know, I heard chorus or phaser kind of blended in there a little bit, and different types of distortions. It's not just like, hey, here's a Sans amp or here's a dark glass. It's like, here's a couple more textures that we've got, maybe even some fuzz kind of thrown in there. But it goes on of like, how can I serve the song even though there's more of a free kind of structure to it, right? What can serve the song? How can I thicken things up a little bit? How can I add a different sound that adds a different character to what we're playing? Bands like Immolation that use, disharmony in a perfect manner, or bands like Ulcerate or anything like that, that use that almost as opposed to melody to create a melody in their own right. I mean, we could really get down to like the minutiae detail, like what type of scale, is it a whole tone scale? Is it a harmonic minor, whatever. Right. And you can get so much inspiration from just going, oh yeah, that kind of alien part would sound really good here after playing something that's a little bit more rooted in just a standard minor scale. But let me add this kind of chorus effect on top of it to kind of double it or whatever.
Yeah, I think Slimelord's a lot about what it sounds like texturally, and like what the sound, like what kind of shape the sound makes you think about as you listen to it. But Cryptic's more very like angular and like specific, but a lot of Slimelord's about just the organic,
the
like
vibe,
vibe.
atmosphere.
And then when you mentioned bands like Ulcerate and stuff, do you know Ad Nauseam from Italy?
I don't.
They put a record out recently called Imperative Imperceptible Impulse. Really, really wild. It's like the next Gorguts Obscura, but they just created like their whole own language. It's complete anti-melody, but they go like so deep into it that they create their own like new rules that are just complete music theory but backwards, and they use those like new like warped rules as their like groundwork to base off. That's really cool.
Of course, listening to this album, it feels like you're kind of thrown into the swamp, of course, with all of the different like field recordings and stuff. I guess my first question is, are you all right? Did you have any problems with those geese while you're out there, man? I don't fuck with geese, but it sounded really cool as an opening for the record.
Yeah. That was recorded at Stanley Marsh, and there's like a big pond marsh kind of thing, and there's benches where you can sit, and but like occasionally they're all crowded up on the shore, like geese, ducks, and swans and stuff, and occasionally they're just screaming their heads off, and like I'd noticed it a couple of times, and a couple of years ago, whenever I did it, I was like, right, this time if they go wild, I'm going to record it, and it was always an idea to put it at like the start of a Slimelord track. Like I remember us doing some rehearsal demos years ago, and I put it at the beginning of a couple other tracks that haven't like that we haven't worked on in a while. So when it came to the album, I was like, I've got to use that geese idea at the beginning. It'll sound totally horrifying.
I mean, that's it. I mean, point was across. Like it was pure chaos at the beginning of that. Like I grew up in the southern US, so like different ponds, different like lakes and stuff that we were all around. And I definitely like, you wake up in the morning, the sun's coming up, and there's just like geese and birds and everything like that, just making terrifying noises. Especially if you've ever been to like Florida and Austin. I know you have. They have peacocks down there. Those things sound horrifying. They're just like a death screech. It's terrifying.
Yeah, man. I think that the chaos that the geese create at the beginning, like, definitely mirrors some of the chaos that the Slimelord goes into, especially like once Beckoning Bell goes to like hyperspeed, like about a minute and a half in or something, and then Hissing More as well. Once the like dirgy intros come, it goes to like ridiculous speeds. So those like moments of chaos are definitely mirrored in that like geese section. Yeah.
Are y'all like big nature people? Is that kind of like maybe? I just love that there is like, obviously like nature's beautiful and everything, but there is such an eeriness to, some of the textures like we've mentioned, or like the kind of world building you're creating. Are you like, maybe did that come from like just going out and venturing and getting lost in the woods or something like that? Like, was this kind of always a landscape that maybe was in the back of your mind?
Slimelord's always been like a naturey swamp, organic kind of feel, and we've all done our fair share of like, walking out, going for walks and stuff. You've been more than me, I think.
Yeah, getting out on the countryside and stuff. So I used to live in Manchester, and there's like a place called the Peak District, and it's a funny story. So Sam, just gonna plug our little thing as well. We have a project called Sewer Theme,
Yeah.
like a Death Doom thing. I've got like 2 EPs, but we went out and wild camped there. And I remember us getting some, it was like super late. We were getting some food like that we brought with us. And then we just got swarmed by like so many flies, man.
Oh.
And it was kind of like the Pestilence album cover.
Yeah.
That's how our faces looked, you know. But yeah, it's nice to connect with nature and stuff, and you know, to bring those sounds into things is yes.
Yeah, it mostly comes from Andy, our vocalist, who's studied a lot of like environmental disease stuff, and that's why we lean so heavily into all those themes. And yeah, all the records have had, like the EPs have had like the artwork and the production to kind of fit into it. But the album Chytridiomycosis Relinquished was the first one where like every element was completely just built into that.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, from the artwork to the name. I mean, obviously, you know, it's not just to make people like me sweat trying to pronounce it, but also like the moment I heard it, I was like, what the fuck is that? I have to look into it. And then you kind of dive into your own rabbit hole with it as well. I kind of miss the days of like hearing about, you know, like maybe like Dan Lilker and like Scott Ian rifling through like a medical book and then it's like Anthrax. Oh, that's perfect. Like, what was it about that name that like, was it just, it's just so unique. I haven't heard anything like that before. And then to make it sound so fitting with the rest of the record, I love it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Apparently Andy mentioned it like a few years ago because he was doing like a university lecture and it got mentioned and he brought it up then. But I remember like rediscovering it and just looking at it. It was like, what the hell is that? I've got to look at what that means. And then, you know, you go into a big rabbit hole down there. Do you remember when I first mentioned like this is what the album's going to be called?
Yeah, it was like it's a bit of a mouthful, like, but it sounds cool. And then yeah, you know, you've got your whole sort of bibliography thing.
Yeah, it grabs your attention just with the way it looks and the way you have to pronounce it. So
Austin has outtakes from the review, and there's points where like I got it, I know I got it. And like I would mispronounce a syllable or something. And there's points where I'm just laughing in the air, just attempting to pronounce this. There's so many takes like that.
What's even better is just knowing that you're by yourself, just laughing like a crazy person, like in that room.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just like trying to edit it together. And I'm on a completely different stage, just going like, he's losing it. He's quite literally losing it.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever an alternate title. It was just like, yeah, this is it. It sounds insane, and I just think it's got like a bit of extra traction based on like people trying to pronounce it.
Yeah, and it just having a theme like that, you know.
And then of course the artwork too being so perfect. I mean, Brad Moore, you know, the name speaks for itself with some of your label mates as well. I mean, I could have like maybe not heard anything from this record at all and just picked it up by the album artwork alone. It just fits it so perfectly. I doubt there were any like revisions or anything like that with, you know, outside of the, like you mentioned, like the name is perfect. The album art just seems so like, wow, it like fits perfectly.
Yeah, the artwork's totally weird, isn't it? It's just, we kind of let Brad Moore go wild while like giving him a general vibe and a couple of things that we definitely want to see in there, like the resurrection chamber, the vent where all the amphibians are swimming around. There's like a goblin with a cauldron on the left, and
You said there's something from every song in the cover to find, right?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, definitely. Every song is like represented in there, and we just let Brad Moore go like totally wild and use his own imagination, which is like his strong point, you know, just letting his imagination go wild. But what's your favorite song? I'll tell you where that's in the artwork.
Ooh. Dylan?
Oh man, you go first.
I think it's this is again another one that was really hard to Bactramorph. I'm gonna stumble over it. Or is it title? oh my God. I'm like having trouble thinking of the pronunciation.
Tidal Slaughtermash.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's all about like coastal erosion. And like over on the bottom left of the record, there's like a kind of like a disgusting like ocean pool thing and like a cliffside. So like the cliffs are meant to be like the coast like falling into the ocean, and
Yeah.
that's where that one is. And then what other elements are in there? What else?
I know it's the title that Austin was, I think, having a hard time saying. It is Batromorphia Resurrection Chamber. Hopefully
Yes.
I got that right.
Yeah.
Because that's the big track for me on that one. I'm assuming that's the centerpiece.
That's cool to hear. I mean, at one point that was going to be an instrumental, because it was we kind of linked it to Heroic Demise because it was like really simple and kind of stripped back. But yeah, that piece is like in the center of the art, underneath the tentacle guy. There's like a vent, and then all the amphibians are coming out and swimming because the villain Mutanta is like building his legions beneath the earth, and he puts in these fossils of these Batrachomorpha amphibians from millions of years ago, and then he puts them in this like magical vent, and then they come back out regenerated and resurrected, and they're like swarming around ready as his like legions. But yeah, that track was going to be an instrumental for a while, but we decided to like add vocals like later on, and they're quite like obscured with like loads of reverb, and then the actual vocals like come in like a bit later. What do you reckon to that track? It's a bit similar to Heroic Demise with like, especially the intro. It's just like, well, in fact, nearly the whole song is just.
Well, I think
like first fret,
it builds and it kind of makes you wait, and then when the riff does hit, it's like deserved, I suppose.
Yeah, it's that that tension. It builds tension to get to it. But no, just what I really thoroughly enjoy about the record overall is even before like digging into the album and going, all right, there's kind of a thematic continuity throughout the whole record. It immediately upon first listen felt like, okay, I'm already in the spot that I want to be to listen to the record. Like I can just with the soundscapes that are in it, just with obviously the sound samples of the geese and the different animals. I already know where I'm at. I already know that there's some sort of creature that's being fought during this album. Like I get it. And like, I love shit like that. I love already having the mental image of the album in my head just by looking at the artwork and listening to it and going, okay, I'm sold. Like this is something I know I'm going to enjoy for a long time.
Awesome, man. Yeah, cheers. And you mentioned it was like one of your bass albums.
Yeah, which
yeah.
Thank you so much, man.
Oh, no problem, man. I've noticed that, and maybe you guys have too, is that and I don't know if this is conscious, but over the last handful of years, especially with some of the more modern death metal bands that are coming out, they're starting to feature the bass as they should. And I think it takes guys like yourself and many other musicians to make that happen. It's finally being used as more than just a fundamental, right? It's not just, hey, here's holding the ground, here's the low end, here's the traditional rock thing. It's like, okay, there's a reason, there's a frequency for it. There's a reason that you can get all the tone shaping you can out of whatever instrument. There's a reason each musician sounds the way they do. Let's use it. It's not like, not everybody's going to sound like an Alex Webster, right? He sounds like him, guys that played like a Sean Malone and Cynic sounds like Sean Malone. Like you're not going to replicate him. But those guys stood out for a reason. And it's nice to finally see that, the bass become in forefront in death metal records. Even like I just did this recent Siverus record as a review. And even though it's highly distorted on that record, it still stands out. Like it rattles through and you can hear it. And it's so nice to hear that in like extreme music. Because when I was coming up playing in bands when I was younger, and the bass was always buried. I know you've dealt with it too, but I can't tell you how many shows I played and they're like, well, you've got an 810 or whatever. We don't need the mic. You don't need anything. Just turn it up, and you're just obsolete in the entire mix, and everyone's mad at you.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like it, it has a super important role a lot of the time, and it's nice that it's more at the forefront. And I hope that continues, and we keep continuing to see that to grow.
Yeah, and shout out to Damien Herring. His mix is
Oh yeah.
on the
Correct.
bass.
The mix on this is great.
Oh yeah,
really makes it shine.
Yeah.
he's done a killer job for sure, man. Big up Damien.
Speaking to a theme as well with just kind of hearing you talk about some of the artwork, and I'm kind of reminded of I guess your label mates and Cannibal Corpse with some of like the graphic novels that they've done. It would be so cool to kind of like rifle through like almost like just like a short like little thing of like some of the backstory of this record, or even like Cryptic Shift. It doesn't Coheed like have like the Armory Wars or something like that? Like they have their own thing. I would like it would just be so fun to see like how
like
this
a synopsis
unfolds.
or something.
Yeah, that would be so cool. But I remember Cannibal also did like a sort of like graphic novel, or maybe like a few years back. But
yeah, I've got it's the Evisceration Plague record. I have
that's
it.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of like definitely a lot of time needs to be spent on like doing stuff like that. Having like a piece of art commissioned for like every new scene and page. It's like quite a big undertaking compared to like on top of making the music and all that. So, but I definitely love to do it. I mean, I've got so many ideas to do that for Cryptic, like writing basically novels. So that'll eventually come around, I guess. And yeah, like for the Slimelord record, there's like in the inlay, you get the lyrics, but and then on the other side, there's like 11, 12 paragraphs or so that tell you about like each section of the story, which are meant to be more like literature, and it's meant to like read a bit, maybe a bit like Lovecraft or something, where you read it and you just like, ooh, what? I ain't got enough information there, but I've got enough to be really interested, and I want to know what the hell are the 5 stomachs within the toad, and like wow, so at least that's included. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for Cryptic because that story is like really wild.
You get signed with Metal Blade maybe a few years back, and then it sounds like with Slimelord, a lot of this stuff was maybe self-release as well. But on this recent record, you signed with $20 Spin. How did those relationships form? What has it been like to work with these labels thus far?
Yeah, for Slime, we were like demoing the album. I think we did like maybe a couple extra tracks that aren't on the album at the time, like the Squealer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But we just sent it to Dave, and like pretty quickly he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we were like, "Awesome!" I mean, $20 right at the top of our list, way beyond everything else for Slimelord to work with. So it was like a really smooth process. Dave's super cool, and it went real smooth. And here it is, it's out, and that's awesome. Yeah. And then Cryptic, off the back of Visitations, they loved it and wanted to work with us, and yeah, here we are. That's coming out soon. Well, we're recording it soon.
I'm stoked to hear that. What sort of things do you think? Did you learn anything from Visitations that maybe you want to expand upon, or perhaps all right, maybe we don't do that. Maybe like we lean a little bit more in this area. What sorts of things did you hope to accomplish with the upcoming Cryptic Shift record?
Talk about your bass.
Cool. Well, I'd say we're coming at it from like a somewhat different influence, which is cool. I don't know. I don't want to give too much away, to be honest, but
yeah, like compositionally, there's definitely a couple of things that we wanted to expand on from Visitations, like the clean sections. We wanted to make those like more prolonged, stranger, but like do it in like a really proficient way. And another thing is like guitar solos. I always want more guitar solos, and that's always in mind. But or any solos, drum solos, bass solos. but in the process of like writing the song and composing it and arranging it, it's always drawn back to what's best for the song, and even though like more guitar solos would be awesome, it's always like no, there don't need to be one here because it doesn't serve the song. It's got to, like it's got to listen really, it's got to flow really smoothly. What's something else? Um, More of the android robot vocals. There's definitely more of those.
Well, it's a good point with the guitar solos too, and I've noticed it with both of these records in that, you're obviously very technically proficient, and I'm very jealous. But like you said, I feel like you know when to do it and when to go ham. Like it's singable, like memorable solos are so important to me, and I found myself getting lost in a lot of this record. And I could say the same thing for a couple other of like your $20 spin label mates, like with Worm and Tomb Mold, where it's like these are like just so. There's a lot of thought, and I certainly appreciated that with like a solo, because yeah, you could really just. I'm sure you could go down the neck all day long, but there were a lot of like really memorable moments that like caught my ear. So yeah, I mean, I think you certainly accomplished that for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Like when it comes to like the actual songs, that's really thought about and composed. But like when it comes to guitar solos, it's like way more a personal thing, and that's like where I can do a lot of like weird and strange things. But yeah, ultimately, like there's melodies that do come out, and definitely on the next Cryptic record, there's a lot more like focus on like the melody personally in like solos. Uh, and then I don't know what do you think when it comes to bass solos?
Um, I'd say there's some parts that are a bit Visitations esque, but then there's other parts that kind of hit a bit different in some way. I don't know, like just like a bit more different styles of solos, I suppose.
What about ones on the Slimelord record?
Um,
Because there's a bunch of sections on the Slimelord record where there's definitely a handful that are like near the end of songs when there's like a big outro riff, and there's like a progression with the layers that are added as it goes on, and like a really prominent one is like when the bass comes in, like at the end of Beckoning Bell, Batra.
oh,
Like when the flanger hits.
yeah. I suppose like with the Slimelord record in mind, it's definitely, as we've touched upon, like a texture thing. So if it was to be at the very start of the song or a very start of a section, and I just came in with that, it just totally wouldn't work. But because you've like let the song's like breathing, and then you come in with it, and it gives you that extra sort of like texture. Yeah, for sure. So try to be like, yeah, contextually
Yeah,
appropriate.
and I find like those moments on the bass are some of the most singable moments on the Slimelord record. And like in the mixing process, that's when those moments like popped out from beneath the murk, because because you're all focused on like getting everything recorded, and then like having a couple of extra ideas in the mix. It's like, oh my god, right, put some flange on that bass, ride it up a bit, put some echo on it or chorus or whatever, and it's like, wow, that's a whole like section of the song that didn't exist until like the mixing process, and it's now like a really prominent part that always like catches my ear.
Yeah, I suppose there's, because it is so dense. Like something I'm into with records is that you can always hear something new when you listen. So it's like a really good a good game where, oh shit, I can replay that, like, because there's things that I will have missed, kind of thing.
Has it been easy to recreate some of these sounds and textures live? I know you've got some shows coming up, and I believe you played a few in the meantime as well. What's the live reception been like in kind of playing, Cryptic as well as Slimelord songs?
Yeah, it's been cool with Slime. We've done our release show in London a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
I'd say with that, yeah, with like the atmosphere and the textures, we've got it pretty down. There's certain intricate parts, for example, like volume swells or having certain effects on. And yeah, just making sure that our practice we're honing that in, and when it comes to live, it translates pretty well. I reckon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm thinking which parts on the record are like hardest to recreate. The ending of Beckoning Bell after like the slam kind of riff, and then the outro builds in. There's an effect that's using the super ego pedal from Electro Harmonics. Really cool, like swells in whatever you like play. Like if you play a chord, it'll like slowly like build up, and it's like one of my favorites. Love it. And at the end of Beckoning Bell, the distortion guitar kind of dies out while the super ego and the cleans are going up, and that's like you have to in the practice room like rearrange the ending of the song and figure out when elements are going to die out. So initially I come in with like just the distortion, the riff with just like that, and then we all come in, and then I do like a lead guitar solo on top, and then as that's ending I'll put like a delay pedal on to echo it out so it's smooth, because on the record it fades in and out, but live I kind of just power in, and that lead comes in like pretty punchy, which gives like the live performance a bit of a different feel. And then I leave the delay pedal on and like do a version of the riff that's like got a lot of bends in that makes it a bit mushy. And then when the groove comes back in, I'll turn the super ego on, but keep distortion on. And then after one small way round, I'll turn the clean on, but still with all the pedals. So there's like a blend of everything with like my guitar part. But on like the record, there's like 3 or 4 layers of that. And then you have to think about like what's John and Trav going to be doing to like back up the whole dynamic shift.
Mm-hmm.
So like after the solo, what do you do when it's just the drums building thing? Instead of like playing the full riff, you'll just do like big strums, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's something related to that. When we do Splayed Mudscape, that's like a super fun song to play, but it's also kind of, I wouldn't say difficult, but it's one of the trickier ones in terms of, because it's that same sort of feel all the way through. It needs to be like super consistent. But again, I think we've done that well, but it's just like something to consider, as well as there's the bass sort of break, but on the record there's a clean going with that, but you kind of just leave that for me to play on my own live. Which
yeah.
I think people like a bass break, so
Yeah, they definitely do. Yeah. On record, one of the breaks is like more prominent bass and the clean guitar is just hovering underneath. But then the second one, it's like flipped, and the bass is the focus, and the clean's more of like an ambient thing. But yeah, what you said about Splayed, that one's definitely the one you have to concentrate the most on when playing it live, because the like the nature of the riffs and the constant like just flow. It does feel like a splayed mudscape. Like videos of like those horrible floods in like India, when it's just like a complete like monsoon's worth of stuff in one river, and it's just like driving like this like kind of slow pace, but the immensity and like weight of everything. That's what that song kind of feels like, with like the big chugs. And you have to play that song with like 110% commitment, like only. And that's because if you don't, it's kind of like there's something off here.
It's a whole other animal. It sounds like a lot of just like thinking. And also, I mean, it seems like you guys have also done like some double duty, I saw that you played, both bands played on that Incantation 30th anniversary show. You got like a festival coming up as well that you guys are going to be pulling double duty. to go from like one mindset where you're thinking maybe more in line with Cryptic Shift, and then maybe to have to like transfer over to Slimelord. I mean, I'm sure you guys are like, well practiced and well oiled machine. I'm just like thinking over here. I'm like, damn, look at that. Like, how are we doing that?
We've done it a couple of times, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was interesting with Incantation because it was Slimelord on first.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you know how it is, like the Death Doom, real like feeling just drudgy and like a swamp monster or some shit. And then to go into the high energy, I mean, in some way it was cool because I felt like super warmed up because we'd done the first set. But yeah, bit of a strange thing, but yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a good warm up because in Slimelord I only do like a couple of vocals and I can like chill out more and just vibe on the guitar. But like Cryptic's really focused all the way through. But it's nice to get a warm up on the vocals and the guitar. What was I going to say now? Yeah, for the Incineration Festival in a couple of months, Cryptic's like playing one stage, and then we have to like pack up, drive around the corner to the next venue, and then like reset up because Slimelord's headlining one of the smaller stages. So that'll be some good fun. Yeah,
It looks cool. It's like Dead Congregation, Conan, Amorphous. It looks a lot of fun. I'm always so jealous of these like festivals overseas. It's like definitely a bucket list thing for me to go. But I mean, and then you also have an upcoming tour as well with Cryptworm, correct? It's the Oozing from the Netherworld, the European tour.
yeah. Killtown bookings. I think it's pretty much all booked now, so the announcement should be pretty soon. Yeah, we're going back to Europe. We did a Killtown tour with Cryptic 22, and that was ace. We did that with Bedsaw, so it's nice to be going back this time with Slimelord, and it'll be good fun because Joss, who plays guitar in Cryptic, plays bass
in Cryptworm.
Plays bass in Cryptworm.
There you go.
All the boys.
Yeah, and then the drummer for Cryptworm now is the drummer of Joss's other band, Separation. So it's yeah, it'll be good fun. That
we all pretty much know each other, bar one guy who is
Will
sound. Yeah, met him like once. He's cool.
The show's coming up. The year's started out strong with the record. You got another one on the way. Is there anything that you would hope to accomplish in 2024? What other sorts of things are on the docket? Like, what are you, when the year's all said and done, what do you hope to have accomplished this year?
Yeah, the Slimelord's got a bunch of shows like out that are coming up like after for like the second half of the year that are really exciting to play and announce, and that'll create like a really nice year for like Chytridiomycosis Relinquished, and I was going to mention earlier with us being in like Slimelord mode over the past couple of years, like at the forefront of like releasing stuff like every year and then putting the album together. Like the Cryptic Shift stuff has been brewing like beneath all that. So it's like definitely over the last few months, it's been really nice to transition to like full on Cryptic Shift mode, and Slimelord can like chill out with the album being out, and with us all rehearsed, we can play the album, we can go out and play it. So yeah, Cryptic's really like ramping up at the moment. So it's going to be sick.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, but one thing we definitely like to do is just share things we've been listening to as of late, whether it be new or something old or obviously heavy or non-heavy. We don't really care. It's all good music to us. I don't know if Dylan or John or whoever wants to start. I'd love to hear what you guys have been checking out recently.
I've been jamming the latest Afterbirth album a whole lot.
Oh, it's a great record.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he's heard it, but yeah, it's phenomenal. And obviously on the topic of bass, what he's doing there is incredible. How it like interweaves between the guitars and the drums, super inspiring for sure. That's like a new thing. Something old I've been jamming is a band called Japan. I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but it's quite a big influence on me because the bass player is this guy called Mick Kahn. I heard like a track by them That's called Visions of China. That just has this riff that's incredible. When I first heard it, like I didn't play fretless at the time, but I was like, how the hell's he making it sound like this? I didn't really get it, but yeah, there's a record called Gentlemen Take Polaroids from 1980, I think it is. Super cool, quite like new wave ish, but then it's very synth heavy and it's very dense. It's cool. Definitely check it out.
What I've been listening to is the newest single from Malignancy, Purity of Purpose, and talk about bass players going on with this. This is the first release from the band in like 5 years, the first newest recorded music in like 12. It has Jacob Schmidt, I believe is how his last name is pronounced, from Defeated Sanity playing the bass in the studio. But the band also has the bassist from Exist, Alex Weber. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's their current bass player playing live. Yeah, I've really been waiting for this band to put something new out for a very long time. Their guitar player has this like kind of endless riff thing that he does that like the riff is like 16 bars long, and it's just like, where's the start point? Where's the end point? Where's the middle? Especially for like brutal death metal to get something that's that catchy and like that interesting is just off the charts for me. But the new record will be called Discontinued. It'll be coming out on June 14th through Willowtip Records.
I like riffs that are really long. Like Opeth do that a lot. I love like 60-bar long riffs. That sounds good. That sounds like a real bass record.
As long as it's mixed right, I'm happy. With brutal death metal, every so often it's like, all right, it's there. We know it's there. You can kind of hear the top end click a little bit, but they tell me it's there. But sometimes it's like, and Justice for All has bass too, apparently.
I got a few recommendations. The new Atrabilis on $20 spin as well.
Yes, hell yeah. Looking forward to that.
One of my favorite bands the last couple of years. As soon as I heard them back on the EP they put out, I was like, I love the modern production style, but the dissonance, and they've like really got their own style with the riffs, and then like a couple of like really like unique sprinkles to do with putting like a weird flange tremolo effect over the guitar or vocals. Really cool band. Looking forward to their new release. But like the things I've been jamming mostly lately is I'm totally in a Mahavishnu orchestra zone, like permanently at the moment, and the Lost Trident sessions, jamming that so much, which is like a record that they recorded but then scrapped for whatever reason, and then it was like rediscovered 20 years later in the late 90s and then actually put out. So it's like a weird lost album, and I think it's their best material, especially the track Stepping Tones, really like alien sound and evil. And then another one is the Predator soundtrack. Went to see that at the cinema the other day because it got like a re-release. Flawless movie. But the soundtrack, I was like, this soundtrack works so well for the movie. You know, it's not like a John Williams Star Wars thing where it's like beautiful. It just works so well with the movie, and that little rhythm that as I was listening to like that as the movie was going on, I just thought, you know, like, what if Slimelord did a cover of this main theme?
Yeah.
It's weirdly major key. A lot of the themes in there, like I just watched the movie like last week. It's got this weird kind of like upbeat kind of theme going on until like you see obviously the Yautja pop in. But it's got this weird juxtaposition of, all right, it sounds like it's a major key tone, and then it just immediately, like stop on a dime, goes into this terrifying sound. Prey has a very similar kind of vibe to it. If you've ever watched that, has a very similar vein in the soundtrack as the original.
Yeah. I remember because after I watched the film, I went to look up like the score, and the rhythm and tempo was like completely different to what I thought it was, like, you know, with that simple rhythm, but like the feel of it was like completely different, which was really interesting.
Killer movie. And speaking of Yautja, my recommendation is kind of connected to the band Yautja, based out of Nashville. This is a new project, a 2-piece that is Based in Chicago, it's made up of members of Yautja and Immortal Bird, a great Chicago death metal band in my area. They have a new single out, Spurious Ovation. That's the first track from their self-titled EP that is going to be coming out on the 26th. It's like 6 songs. I think it's about maybe 16 minutes in length, but it's kind of got a little bit of everything, some death metal, some hardcore, some black metal. Everything seems pretty unconventional, even from like the album artwork. So I think you can pre-order or buy the digital copy of the record, but I think there will be some physical copies of the Wretched Blessing EP out shortly, and maybe some upcoming shows. So this was great. I love all the recommendations, and I'm so stoked to check it all out. Chytridiomycosis Relinquished is out now. We got a Cryptic Shift record on the way. Xander, John, thank you guys so much for taking the time out to talk to us. I really, really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, cheers, Austin. Cheers, Dylan. Had a good time, man.
Thanks, dudes.
Thanks, guys.
Can't wait to hear more from y'all. You can always follow us at Riff Worship Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be back next week talking about some riffs. Maybe we'll have a guest, but until then, John, Xander, Dylan, myself, see you later. Bye.
See you guys.